They dragged her into the town square and called her a murderer, a poisoner, a witch. 30 people surrounded Eliza Moore, tearing at her dress, screaming to strip her naked and check for the devil's mark. The sheriff just stood there and watched. For 14 months since her husband died, this widow had been slowly destroyed by lies. And now she was about to die for a crime she never committed. Then a single gunshot split the air. Silas Crow, the richest rancher in 3 counties, a man who never got involved in town affairs, stood there with a smoking rifle. And what he said next made everyone's jaw drop. "Eliza Moore, will you marry me?" But here's the twist. This wasn't a rescue. It was a business deal, because someone in that crowd had stolen her dead husband's life savings, and they needed Eliza broken, alone, and silent to get away with it. Silas didn't offer her safety. He offered her time to find the truth, time to fight back. The best revenge isn't bitterness. It's building a life so beautiful that it proves every enemy wrong. This story proves you don't need someone to save you. You need someone who believes in you long enough for you to save yourself. If you believe in second chances and rising from the ashes, drop a comment telling me what you've rebuilt in your own life. And if you want more stories about women who refuse to stay broken, hit subscribe and ring that bell. Your support means everything. That morning, like every morning for 14 months, Eliza woke up alone in her small cabin. It used to smell like her husband, Thomas. Now it only smelled like loneliness. She put on her plain gray dress, braided her dark hair, and tried to make her hands stop shaking. The walk into town was 20 minutes of trying to be invisible, hoping she could just get her food and get back home without trouble. But Red Hollow was waiting for her. The moment Eliza entered the market square, the air went still and heavy, like right before a bad storm. Too many people were there for a Thursday. Too many eyes watched her and did not look away. Someone whispered, "Murderer," as she passed. She kept her head down and walked to Pete's vegetable stand. He watched her with sad eyes as she picked out 3 small potatoes. "That will be a penny each," he mumbled. Last week they were 3 for a penny. She knew it and he knew it, but she just paid the man. Eliza Moore. The voice was smooth and sharp like a shard of glass. Eliza froze. She knew that voice. Marbell Kane stood 10 feet away, dressed in fine purple silk. She was a beautiful woman, the way a rattlesnake is beautiful, with eyes that held a special kind of crazy. "Good morning, Mrs. Kane," Eliza said, her own voice flat. Marble smiled a little. "Is it? I don't think it is a good morning when a poison maker is walking around decent folk." Poison maker. That was the new lie they were telling. They forgot she had cared for Thomas for 6 long weeks while he was sick, begging the doctor for help and holding his hand until the very end. "I make herbal remedies," Eliza said, trying to stay calm. "You make poisons," Marbell snapped back. "Everyone knows it. You probably practiced on poor Thomas first." "My husband died of a fever," Eliza's voice trembled. "Doc Hartley said—" "That old fool?" one of Marbell's friends sneered. "We all know he was going to leave you, so you poisoned him first." It was not true. Thomas had loved her. But the truth did not matter here. Agnes Holbrook, a woman who once called Eliza friend, spoke up. "My boy got sick after you gave me that cough syrup." "He had croup," Eliza pleaded. "The tea I gave you was harmless." "He suffered for 3 more days," Agnes said, refusing to look at her. Eliza knew it was no use. They did not want the truth. The crowd was closing in now, a wall of bodies blocking any escape. The open square now felt like a cage. "I think," Marbell said, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear, "that this town has been far too patient with you, Eliza Moore." A hard shove from behind sent Eliza stumbling forward. Her basket fell, and the potatoes rolled into the dust. Hands pushed her back and forth, each shove harder than the last. "Please," she whispered, hating how weak she sounded. "I have not done anything wrong." "Liar," someone yelled. Then a voice cut through the noise, cold and cruel. "Strip her! Check her for witch marks!" A wave of pure terror washed over Eliza as hands grabbed at her dress. Her neighbors were going to tear her apart, right here in the middle of the town square. These were people she had known her entire life, their faces now ugly with hate. She begged them to stop, but the sheriff just stood there and watched. She was an innocent woman, a widow with no one to protect her, and that was her only crime. This story is about a terrible injustice. But it is also about how help can come from the most unexpected place. Just as Eliza accepted her fate, a single gunshot cracked through the air, silencing everyone. A tall man stood at the edge of the square, holding a rifle. It was Silas Crow, the most powerful rancher in 3 counties. He was a man who never got involved in town business, but today was different. Silas walked slowly through the parted crowd. He stopped about 5 feet from Eliza, his eyes unreadable. He then turned to face the mob. Marble Kane, their leader, finally spoke. "She killed her husband," she declared. Silas looked at her with a cold expression. "Everyone knows that," he said, repeating her words. "That is a funny phrase. It usually means nobody knows anything for sure." He reminded them all that the town doctor had signed the death certificate stating it was a fever. This left Marbell speechless. Silas then looked at the sheriff, whose only job was to keep the peace. The sheriff could not defend his inaction. Silas turned back to Eliza, who was still on the ground, and offered her his hand. He helped her up and wrapped his large coat around her torn dress, making her feel safe for the first time in months. Then he faced the crowd with a stunning announcement. "This town believes Mrs. Moore is a danger," he said. "So I have a solution that should satisfy everyone." He looked down at Eliza, his voice softening. "This is your choice, and there is no obligation." He then asked the most shocking question. "Mrs. Moore, will you marry me?" She just nodded, afraid her voice would crack. Silas took a deep breath, and his voice boomed across the town square. "Eliza Moore, will you marry me?" For a second, Eliza's world just spun off its axis. She figured the strain had finally broken her, that she was hearing things, because there was no way the powerful, untouchable Silas Crow had just asked her to marry him. But the gasps from the crowd told her it was real. "What?" Marble's shriek sliced through the air. "You cannot be serious!" Silas never looked at Marble. His eyes stayed locked on Eliza. "I am dead serious. Mrs. Moore is a widow with no one to look out for her. This town has made it plain she is not safe. As my wife, she will have my name and my protection. Anyone who tries to hurt her will have to answer to me." He paused. "Seems like a common-sense solution to me." "Common sense?" Marble screeched. "She is a poisoner." "Allegedly." Silas's voice turned to ice. "Since when do we punish folks based on rumors, Mrs. Kane? I thought we had laws in this country." His eyes scanned the crowd. "Or have we all decided to settle things with mob rule now?" No one said a word. Silas looked back at Eliza. "So, what do you say, Mrs. Moore? It is not for love, I will grant you that. But it will keep you alive. That has to be worth something. Marry a man she did not know, all to prove a point to a hateful town." But what other choice did she have? If she said no, the whispers and shoves would one day turn into something worse. If she said yes, she would be tied to a stranger. But she would be alive. "Yes." The word was a faint whisper. "Louder, if you please," Silas said gently. "I want everyone to hear it." Eliza lifted her chin and looked straight into Marble Kane's face, which was turning purple with rage. "Yes, I will marry you." The square exploded. Marble started screaming. Other women gasped in shock. The men started muttering, some angry, some looking mighty impressed. Silas just smiled a little and nodded at the sheriff. "Sheriff, I reckon Judge Morrison is in town. We will need him for a ceremony. Let's say 2 o'clock. That will give Mrs. Moore time to gather her things. Now you wait just a minute." Marble sputtered. "This is crazy. She will poison you in your sleep." "Well, I suppose that is a chance I will have to take," Silas said calmly, "unless you have some real, legal evidence against her, not just town gossip." Marble's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "I did not think so." Silas put a hand on the small of Eliza's back, and the crowd parted like the sea. "Come on, Mrs. Moore. Let's get you home." As they walked, the angry shouting started up behind them, but neither of them looked back. At the edge of the square, Silas's huge black stallion was waiting. He helped Eliza up, then swung up behind her, his arms circling her to take the reins. "Which way?" he asked, his voice low. "East Road," Eliza managed. "About a half-mile past the church." They rode in silence, but Eliza could feel the solid warmth of his chest against her back. He smelled of leather and something earthy and masculine that made her heart flutter. "You did not have to do that," she finally said. "No," he agreed. "I did not. Then why did you?" He was quiet for a minute. "Because I have watched this town tear you apart for 14 months, and I have had my fill of watching it." Eliza turned to look at him. His face was shadowed by his hat, but she saw his jaw was set hard. "You have been watching me?" "Hard not to notice," he said. "Your husband, Thomas, was a good man. He worked for me for 3 years before he passed." Eliza shook her head. "Thomas had worked so many odd jobs. He talked about you," Silas went on. "Said you could make him laugh like nobody else. Said you could grow a garden in the rockiest soil. He told me you talked to animals and they seemed to understand you. He loved you a whole lot." Tears welled up in Eliza's eyes. "Then why do they all say he wanted to leave me?" "Because Marble Kane needed everyone to believe you were alone and weak." Silas's voice turned hard. "The easiest way to do that was to poison the memory of your own husband." "But why does she hate me so much?" "I never did a thing to her." "Are you sure about that?" Silas asked. "Think back. When did all the ugly rumors really get started?" Eliza thought for a moment. It was after the funeral, when she went to the bank to ask about the money Thomas had saved. They told her the accounts were empty, paid out to people she had never even heard of. "When I asked about the money," she whispered. "Thomas had saved up a good bit," Silas said. "Nearly $2,000. He was going to buy you a proper house. He told me himself. But after he died, the money vanished, and anyone who might have helped you suddenly had a reason to think you were a dangerous woman." The truth hung between them in the silent air. "Marble stole my money," Eliza said, the pieces clicking into place, "and she turned the whole town against me, so I could not do anything about it." "That is what I figure," Silas said, his arm tightening around her just a bit. "But I cannot prove it. Not yet." "So marrying me? How does that help?" "It does not directly. But it keeps you safe long enough for the truth to find its way out. And it shows Marble Kane she doesn't run this town." Eliza's small cabin appeared. Thomas had built it with his own 2 hands. Now she was leaving it behind. Silas waited outside while she packed her few belongings: a couple of dresses, a hairbrush, and a photo of her and Thomas on their wedding day. She took one last look at the little room that had been her entire world. When she came out, Silas took her bag and tied it to the saddle. She had been happy here once. Maybe, just maybe, she could be happy again somewhere else. Silas helped her back onto the horse, and the silent ride to town felt like a final farewell to her old life. A crowd had already gathered at the church. A nervous Judge Morrison stood on the steps, while a furious Marble Kane glared at them. Silas gave Eliza his arm, his grip steady and sure. The judge cleared his throat. "Are you both certain about this?" Silas's answer was firm. When the judge asked her, Eliza found her voice. Yes. This was not the marriage she had dreamed of, but it was the one she needed to survive. With shaking hands, the judge opened his Bible and began. Remembering the mob that had attacked her and the life that was stolen, Eliza said clearly, "I do." The judge quickly pronounced them husband and wife in the territory of Montana. Silas gave her a brief, proper kiss that felt less like passion and more like a promise. As they mounted his horse to leave, Marble Kane's voice rang out. This is not over, Silas. She will destroy you. Silas looked down at her, his voice cold as ice. You are right, it is not over. I have plenty of time now to find out who stole Thomas's money and who spread lies about his widow. Marble's face went white. Sleep well, Silas added, before riding north, leaving the town in stunned silence. Her chest was a small flicker of hope. The Crow Ranch was a sprawling, impressive place with a grand main house made of timber and stone. A stern-looking older woman met them on the porch. Mrs. Chen, this is my wife, Eliza, Silas said simply. The woman raised both eyebrows. Your wife? Since when? Silas replied, about 45 minutes ago. Mrs. Chen looked Eliza over, from her torn dress to her tired eyes. Her expression softened just a bit. Well, Mrs. Crow, you look like you need a hot bath. I will show you to your room. Silas quietly corrected her. Our room. The inside of the house was just as grand. Mrs. Chen led them to a huge bedroom, easily 3 times the size of Eliza's entire cabin. After the housekeeper left to arrange for a bath, the silence in the room felt heavy. Eliza stood awkwardly, alone with a man she had only known for 3 hours. She had no idea what he expected from her. Eliza, Silas said gently. Look at me. She met his gaze. You are safe here. This marriage is real in the eyes of the law, but you owe me nothing more. You will have your own space and make your own choices. I will not force anything on you. The question burst out before she could stop it. Then why? Why marry me, model? Later, in the safety of his large ranch house, Eliza finally asked him why. Why marriage? She asked. Why not just help me leave town? Silas looked out the window at his vast land. Because anything less would not have protected you, he explained. As my employee, you could be dismissed. As my mistress, your reputation would be ruined. But as my wife, he said, turning to her, you have my name and my protection. Anyone who wants to harm you must answer to me. He then admitted he knew what it felt like to be completely alone. His words were a revelation. He was not just a powerful man. He was a kind one. In that moment, a knock came at the door. The housekeeper called through the wood, Your bath is ready, Mrs. Crow. And just like that, Eliza's new life had begun. The maids filled the tub with steaming lavender-scented water and left without a word. Silas informed her that Mrs. Chen would bring some clothes and that he had matters to attend to before supper. Finally alone, Eliza peeled off her ruined dress. The woman staring back from the mirror was a stranger, bruised and haunted. She sank into the glorious heat of the water, a feeling she had long forgotten. Later, a simple gray dress was laid out for her. It was far too large, but it was clean and whole. Just as she finished braiding her wet hair, Mrs. Chen arrived with a tray. I figured you might be hungry, she said gently. Supper is still an hour away. She could not recall the last time she had eaten until she was full. Thank you, she said, savoring the real tea. Mrs. Chen, if you do not mind me asking, why has Mr. Crow never married? The older woman settled into a chair, ready to talk. Oh, plenty have tried. Marble Cane has been circling for the last 3 years. But Mr. Crow has no interest in women who are only after his land or his name. What is he interested in then? That, my dear, is the question, Mrs. Chen said. He is a complicated man. Built this whole ranch from scrubland and hard work. He treats his people fair, but always keeps to himself. Lonely, but on his own terms. Until you. She paused, her gaze steady. In 20 years, I have never seen that man truly angry. Not until today, when he came back from town looking like thunder. He married you because he believed it was the right thing to do. A sudden shout from the yard pulled both women to the window. Down below, Marbell Cane and a small posse had ridden right up to the gate. Silas walked out to meet them, his relaxed stance looking like a wolf about to face down a pack of coyotes. "I need to go down there," Eliza insisted, moving for the door. Mrs. Chen gently caught her arm. "No, child. You let your husband handle this. That is his place now. You stay right here and watch. Learn how he deals with her kind." Eliza reluctantly agreed. From the window they saw Marble gesturing wildly, her words sharp and angry. Another woman's shrill voice carried on the wind, shouting something about protecting the town. Silas stood still and listened. Then he said something, his own voice too low to hear. Whatever it was, his words hit Marble like a physical slap. Her face went deathly pale. Marble wheeled her horse around so fast the animal nearly bucked, and then she fled in a thick cloud of dust. Silas watched them go, then looked straight up at Eliza's window. He gave her a single firm nod before turning toward the barn. "See?" Mrs. Chen said with a satisfied smile. Later that evening at the supper table, Eliza asked what he had said to Marble. Silas took a deliberate bite of his roast beef. "I told her my marriage was none of her concern. She started claiming you were a danger to the entire territory." He met her eyes from across the long table. "So I suggested that spreading vicious lies, especially to cover up a crime, is a very serious offense. I believe the word I used was conspiracy." Eliza's appetite vanished completely. "This will cause you so much trouble with the town." Silas just looked at her, his expression unreadable. "What exactly can they do? Stop buying my cattle? I sell my stock 3 territories over. Stop working for me? I pay twice what any other rancher does." A small, humorless smile touched his lips. "They cannot take a single thing from me, Eliza." He paused, his voice softening just a bit. "Marrying you cost me nothing. But that does not mean you are free. You have only traded one cage for another." "I can leave," she countered quietly. "You told me I could." "And go where?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. "Back to Red Hollow? To some other town where you would be a woman all alone? You are safer here with me. But do not ever mistake safety for freedom." He sounded truly sorry. The hard truth of his words settled between them, heavy and silent in the big dining room. "Tell me about Thomas," Silas said, breaking the silence. "Not the stories, but who he really was." He explained that a good man deserved to be remembered accurately. So Eliza found herself talking. She told him how they met, how he had courted her with wildflowers and terrible poems, and how their little cabin was her perfect home simply because he was in it. She spoke of the small things, like how his big hands would gently braid her hair when she was ill. Lastly, she shared how he had used his final breaths to make her promise she would keep on living. When she finished, Silas quietly poured 2 glasses of whiskey. "To Thomas Moore," he said, raising his glass. "A good man." Silas motioned to a chair and said, "We need to sort out some practical things. Tomorrow, you'll make a list of what you need. Clothes, personal items, anything for your herb work. Mrs. Chen will drive you into town." "I can't go back there," Eliza said, her voice tight with panic. "Silas, they'll—" "Mrs. Chen will take you to 3 Forks. It is 30 miles west, and news from Red Hollow gets there slow. You will be safe." He waited a beat. "But Eliza, you will have to face that town again someday. We can't hide out here forever." "Why not?" The words tumbled out, full of desperation. "You said you do not need the town. Why can't we just stay here and forget about them?" "Because," he said, his eyes turning hard, "I meant what I told Marble. I am going to find out what happened to Thomas's money. And I am going to find who spread those lies about you." That night, Eliza lay in the huge bed, while Silas slept in a chair near the window. He had insisted, saying he was a light sleeper and wanted her to feel safe. For the first time in 14 months, she fell asleep without being afraid of the morning. The next few days were quiet and strange. Mrs. Chen took Eliza to 3 Forks, where they bought supplies. Not one person stared at her or treated her like she was some kind of monster. Being treated like a normal person felt odd. Silas worked the ranch from sunrise to sunset, but he always joined her for supper. They talked about simple things like the weather or the cattle. They did not talk about him sleeping in the chair and her in the bed. It was just how things were. On the fourth day, everything changed. Eliza woke up to the sound of shouting. Silas's chair was empty. She smelled smoke. Rushing to the window, she saw the barn was on fire. Flames were eating up the walls, a terrible orange against the black sky. Men were yelling and throwing buckets of water, but it was no use. She ran downstairs and out the front door into pure chaos. The heat and the smell of burning hay hit her hard. "Mrs. Crow," a ranch hand yelled, grabbing her arm. "You need to stay back." "Hey, where is Silas?" she asked. The boss went inside to get the horses. Then a part of the barn roof fell in with a sound like thunder. From inside the fire, Eliza heard a terrible scream. Without a second thought, she ran straight for the barn. She plunged through the doorway into a nightmare of smoke and heat. It was so thick she could not breathe or see. Dropping to her hands and knees, she tried to crawl under the worst of it. "Silas!" she screamed into the smoke. A horse with wild eyes charged out of the haze, nearly running her down. Then another and another. Someone was driving them out. "Here!" His voice was strained and came from deep inside the barn. "Eliza, what are you doing? Get out of here!" She crawled toward his voice and found him in a stall, fighting with a tangled horse. The animal was panicked, but Silas was trying to free it. "Help me!" he gasped. "Hold its head!" Eliza grabbed the horse's halter and pressed her face against its nose, just like she had seen Thomas do. "Easy now," she whispered, her lungs on fire. "Easy, boy. We are getting you out." The horse calmed just enough for Silas to free the rope. They stumbled out into the night, coughing and gasping for air as the horse bolted for the pasture. The rest of the barn roof collapsed, sending sparks shooting up like a second sun. "You could have died," Silas said, his voice a mix of anger and fear. "What were you thinking running in there?" "I was thinking my husband was inside a burning building," she shot back, coughing. "What was I supposed to do?" "Yes," he said, grabbing her shoulders. His hands were shaking. "You were supposed to stay safe. That is the whole point of this." "Well, maybe I want to keep you safe too," Eliza said, looking right into his eyes. The anger left his face, replaced by something she could not name. Before he could speak, a ranch hand ran over. "Boss, you need to see this." Behind what was left of the barn, two men were holding a young man who reeked of kerosene. He looked like he belonged in a saloon, not on a ranch. "Caught him trying to run," one of the men said, holding up matches and an empty can. Silas stared at the young man. "What is your name?" "Go to hell." "All right then," Silas said calmly. "Take him to the root cellar and lock him up." "You cannot just lock me up," the man sputtered. "So did my barn," Silas said. "But you are right. Someone ride to town and fetch the sheriff. Tell him we caught an arsonist." The young man's confidence vanished. "I want a lawyer." "You will get one." Silas leaned in close. "Right after you tell me who paid you to set my barn on fire." By dawn, the barn was nothing but ash, but every single horse was safe. As the sun rose over the smoldering barn, Eliza sat beside Silas on the porch steps. "It was marble," she stated. Silas's jaw was tight. "We will need proof. That boy in the root cellar knows something." He vowed that Marble Kane had just started a war she could not possibly win. For the first time in 14 months, Eliza felt a fire ignite inside her. She was done running. "I want to be there when you question him," she said, meeting his gaze directly. "I do not want to be protected anymore, Silas. I want to fight back." A slow, genuine smile spread across his face. "All right then, Mrs. Crow. Let us fight back." Sheriff Dalton finally rode up 3 hours later, acting as if the whole affair was a personal inconvenience. The sheriff waved it off. "Could be the boy just made a mistake." Silas's voice turned quiet and dangerous. "Arson is not a mistake, Sheriff. He set a fire that could have killed my men. When Dalton tried to question the boy alone, Silas stepped directly in his path. I will be there, and so will my wife. Silas made it plain that the fire was a message aimed at her, and the sheriff reluctantly gave in. In the root cellar, the captured boy, who was barely a teenager, tried to act tough. You cannot just lock people up, he snarled. So is setting fires, Silas replied calmly, leaving no room for argument. All right, son, I'm Sheriff Dalton, the lawman said, his voice low. Why don't you tell us why you were on Mr. Crow's land in the dead of night, holding kerosene and matches? The boy tried to play it cool. I was just passing through, found the can on the road. Silas stepped forward. Passing through at 2 a.m, miles from any town with kerosene on your hands? That dog won't hunt. You looking for work? The boy's eyes darted around, searching for a believable lie. Eliza had been watching him, silent. After 14 months of fighting to survive, she could read a man's fear like a book. You're a terrible liar, she said gently. The boy flinched. I know someone paid you for this, she continued, and you're just now realizing they won't protect you if you're caught. Is loyalty to them worth hanging for? Silas added, his voice cold as a stone. Arson that endangers folks is a capital offense here. We had 12 men sleeping in that bunkhouse. A gust of wind, and they'd all be dead. The boy's face went white as a sheet. They said the barn was empty. They said no one would get hurt. Silas locked onto the words. Who is they? The boy's mouth slammed shut, but the damage was done. Sheriff Dalton softened his tone a bit. Son, if you were put up to this, a judge might see it different. But if you protect them, you'll be taking this fall all by your lonesome. The boy looked cornered, the fight draining right out of him. I want a deal, he stammered. You promise I don't hang. Silas knelt down to look him in the eye. What's your name, son? Your real name? After a moment, the boy whispered, Danny Warren. Silas spoke plainly. Danny, you're in a world of trouble. But the person who hired you is just as guilty. Maybe more, since they were too cowardly to do their own dirty work. You tell us who it was, and I'll personally speak to the judge for you. You'll still pay for what you did, but I'll make sure everyone knows you cooperated. Tears welled up in Danny's eyes. She said it was just a scare. $50 and a job. Who, Danny? Silas pressed. Who told you that? Mrs. Kane, he choked out. Maribel Kane. The name fell into the quiet room, heavy and final. Eliza felt a cold certainty settle in her bones. They had all suspected, but hearing it said aloud changed everything. The sheriff looked sick. Are you telling me that Mrs. Maribel Kane, the judge's widow, paid you to burn down this barn? Danny nodded, wiping his face with a filthy hand. Said I'd get more money than 6 months of honest work would pay. My ma's sick, I needed it. You thought you could do one bad thing for a good reason, and it would all just work out, Eliza said, her voice full of a sad understanding. Yeah, Danny whispered. I was wrong. Sheriff, Silas said, standing up. I want that statement written, signed, and witnessed. Then I want you to ride to Red Hollow and bring Maribel Kane in. Dalton balked. Now hold on, Mr. Crow. We can't just go arresting a prominent lady on the word of a hired arsonist. Silas's gaze was like iron. That's why it will be a formal complaint, backed by my men's testimony and the physical evidence. Sheriff, if you fail to do your job, my next stop is the territorial governor's office to discuss why your badge seems to protect the rich. The threat was delivered quietly, but it landed like a hammer blow. Dalton sighed, defeated. Fine, but Mrs. Kane ain't gonna come easy. I don't reckon she will, Silas agreed. That's why I'll be going with you. Eliza spoke up. Me too. Silas didn't hesitate. My wife has every right to face the woman who spent 14 months trying to destroy her. They spent the rest of the morning getting Danny's official statement down on paper. By noon, they were ready to ride. Silas made Eliza change into a proper riding skirt, and the three of them set out, leaving Danny locked in the cellar under guard. The journey to Red Hollow felt 100 miles long. Eliza's stomach was a knot of fear and anticipation. She hadn't been back since her wedding day, a day of terrible public shame. But this time was different. This time she rode between her husband and the sheriff. This time she had the truth on her side. They rode into town just after 1 o'clock. Heads turned. Whispers followed them like a shadow. "That's her," someone hissed. "The Crow Witch." Eliza kept her chin up and her eyes fixed straight ahead. Let them talk. They would all know the truth soon enough. Maribel Kane's house was a big white 2-story affair on the nicest street with a perfect garden out front. As they tied their horses, Eliza took a deep breath. This was it. Justice was finally coming to Red Hollow. Silas Crow and the sheriff walked up to the Kane house, looking like they were heading for a showdown. A stern-faced maid answered the door and looked down her nose at them, especially at Eliza. The sheriff stated their business was official, and Silas cut right to the chase. He said it involved arson and conspiracy. He told the maid to let Mrs. Kane know she could either talk to them quietly, or the sheriff could arrest her in front of the whole town. Her choice. A moment later, Marble Kane appeared, dressed in silk and acting like she was hosting a party. She let them into her fancy parlor, a room set up so the neighbors could not see in. The sheriff asked her plain and simple, "Mrs. Kane, where were you last night between midnight and 3 in the morning?" Marble just raised her eyebrows. "Why, I was right here, asleep in my bed," she said. Silas's voice was calm, but it cut right through the morning quiet. "Your servants are in their own quarters, ma'am. They wouldn't have known if you'd left the house last night." Marble's head snapped toward him. "What in the world are you implying, Mr. Crow?" "I'm not implying a thing. I'm stating facts," Silas said. "Someone tried to burn down my barn last night. We caught him, and he gave us your name." The blood drained from Marble's face. "That is absurd. You cannot take the word of some drifter over mine." "His name is Danny Warren," Sheriff Dalton said, looking at his notepad. 20 years old. Said you paid him $50 at the saloon 2 weeks back to do the job." "I have never set foot in a saloon," Marble declared, standing up straight. "And I don't know any Danny Warren." But Eliza spoke up, her voice steady. "He knew what you were wearing, Marble. He described your purple dress with the black trim. The one you wore to church last Sunday." Marble's mouth hung open. "Anyone could have described that dress." "Maybe," Silas granted. "But he also knew the specific instructions you gave him, things nobody else could have known unless you were the one who told him." "You're framing me!" Marble shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at Eliza. "Because I tried to protect this town from your murderous wife." "My wife did not murder anyone," Silas said, his voice turning to ice. "But for 14 months you have spread lies and turned good people against her. You made her life a misery. Why?" "She killed Thomas Moore," Marble cried. Eliza finally stepped forward, her own anger showing. "My husband died of a fever. Dr. Hartley said so. I grow herbs to make medicine that helps folks, not harm them. You were just afraid of me because you couldn't control me." "Afraid of you?" Marble spat. "You are a nobody. A poor widow with no family and no money. You were easy to—" She stopped, her eyes wide with what she'd almost said. "Easy to what?" Silas asked softly. "Easy to blame?" The air in the room grew thin. Sheriff Dalton cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I think you'd better come down to the office with me and answer a few questions." "I am not going anywhere," she hissed. "I want my lawyer." "That's your right," Dalton said. "But I have a signed confession and plenty of evidence. You're only making this harder on yourself." Suddenly, Marble lunged for the corner desk. She yanked open a drawer and pulled out a small, nickel-plated pistol. "Get out of my house," she ordered, her voice shaking as she aimed it right at them. In a flash, Silas stepped in front of Eliza, shielding her. Marble, put the gun down. This won't help anything. You have already destroyed me, she cried. What does it matter now? What have we taken from you? Eliza asked, stepping out from behind her husband. We only wanted the truth. If the truth destroyed you, that's on you. You don't understand, Marble wailed. You don't know what it's like to build yourself up from nothing only to have it all threatened. Eliza felt the last piece of the puzzle click into place. This is about Thomas's money, isn't it? The $2,000 that went missing when he died. You took it. Marble's face was all the confession they needed. He owed it to the bank. There were debts and fees. Thomas had no debts, Silas said sharply. He was a careful man. Then show us the paperwork, Sheriff Dalton demanded. If it's all legal, there will be bank records to prove it. Marble's hand trembled. The fight went out of her all at once. Like a puppet with its strings cut, she collapsed into a chair, the pistol falling to the floor. I never meant for it to go this far, she whispered. My husband, the judge, he left me with terrible debts. I was about to lose everything. Then Thomas Moore died, and all that money was just sitting there. His wife was a nobody. I didn't think anyone would ask questions. But I did ask, Eliza said, her voice full of sorrow and steel. And to shut me up, you turned the whole town against me, hoping I would be driven away. I just needed more time, Marble sobbed, her perfect makeup running down her cheeks. But then Silas married you, and I knew he would dig until he found the truth. I panicked. I thought the fire would distract y'all. You nearly got 12 men killed because you were a thief and a coward, Silas said, his disgust plain. Sheriff Dalton picked up the pistol from the floor. Marble Kane, he said, his voice firm. I am arresting you for theft and conspiracy to commit arson. The sheriff finally declared, you are under arrest for attempted murder. Before they took her away, Eliza needed to know one more thing. She looked at the now broken Marble and asked, Did you poison my husband Thomas to get his money? Marble swore she had not, claiming he died from a fever just like the doctor said. But she admitted that after he was gone, she saw a chance to take what was not hers. As Sheriff Dalton led a handcuffed Marble out of the house, half the town was already gathered outside, buzzing like bees. Silas's voice boomed across the street. He told the people of Red Hollow they had spent more than a year believing the lies of a thief. He declared that Marble had hired someone to burn down his barn, risking a dozen lives. He told them she would face justice for her crimes. Then he looked at the crowd and asked what justice they would face for their own cruelty to an innocent woman. The truth was finally out in the open. As they rode back to the ranch, Eliza felt a year-long weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time since Thomas died, she could truly breathe. She turned to Silas. Thank you, she said, for believing in me, for giving me a chance to fight. Silas just looked at her, a new warmth in his eyes. You did all the fighting, Eliza. I just opened the gate for you. In that quiet moment, Eliza realized this marriage, which started as a desperate deal, might just turn into something real. A few days later, a tough prosecutor from Helena arrived in Red Hollow. She was determined to uncover every last cent that Marble Kane had handled, and the whole town watched as the investigation began. The folks who had once scorned Eliza now could not even look her in the eye. The women who had attacked Eliza in the street now hurried to the other side to avoid her. They are ashamed, Silas said one afternoon. They are finally realizing what they did. Eliza replied, Good, they should be. She confessed she did not feel victorious, just tired and sad that her neighbors could turn on her so quickly. Silas told her, Fear can make cowards out of good people, but you do not owe them forgiveness. Maybe not ever. The investigation lasted 6 long weeks. It turned out Marble Kane had not just stolen Eliza's $2,000. For nearly 5 years, she had been stealing from widows, orphans, and anyone else she could. The total came to nearly $15,000, a fortune taken from the good people of Red Hollow. It takes a special kind of courage to ask questions when you are supposed to be quiet. Thomas Moore was just one of many folks who had been wronged, but his widow, Eliza, was the one who had the nerve to demand answers. Now the whole town was gathered to hear the truth. This story is about how one person's bravery can expose a dark secret and why you should never be afraid to speak up. Inside the town church, Prosecutor Whitfield stood tall, ready to lay out the whole crooked scheme. She explained how Marble Kane had been stealing from grieving families for years, using forged papers and fake debts. When she got to Thomas's case, Eliza squeezed her husband Silas's hand. The prosecutor's voice was clear and steady. She said that after Thomas passed, he left behind $2,143. But Marble Kane, pretending to help, had taken it all. The lawyer, Mr. Whitfield, laid out the whole ugly truth for the town to hear. He explained that Marble Kane simply stole the money, making up debts that never existed. A low grumble rolled through the church as folks finally understood. Whitfield continued, telling them how Marble spread vicious lies about Eliza, calling her a poisoner and a killer, all because Eliza started asking honest questions. Those very lies led to the attack on her in the market on the 14th of May. Whitfield's voice cut through the heavy silence. "Eliza Moore is innocent," he declared. "Every rumor was a lie, and this community chose to believe them." He looked hard at the faces in the crowd. "You chose mob justice over the law." He announced that Marble would stand trial for a long list of serious crimes, and the case was airtight. "But her crimes," he said, "do not excuse you. Y'all have to live with what you allowed to happen." Then he told Eliza she would get every penny of her husband's savings back, plus interest. Whitfield then turned directly to Eliza. "Mrs. Moore," he asked, "would you care to say a few words?" The offer was a complete surprise. Silas squeezed her hand, leaving the choice entirely up to her. Every single soul in that room had wronged her. She could give them fire and brimstone, and they would surely deserve it. But looking at their ashamed faces, she knew that anger would just keep her chained to this bitter past. So she and Silas walked together to the front. She saw the same faces that had screamed at her, the same hands that had thrown dirt. But now they all just looked small. "I am not going to tell y'all I forgive you," Eliza said, her voice clear as a bell, "because I do not. Maybe I never will. For 14 months I lived in constant fear. Y'all took my peace from me. You stole my chance to properly grieve my husband." Women like Agnes Holbrook started crying right out loud, and most of the men just stared at the floor. "But I will not let you have power over my future," Eliza went on, her voice growing stronger. "I am still standing. You want my forgiveness? Then you must earn it. Be better people. Be the kind of neighbors who stand up against injustice, not join in with the crowd." The church was dead silent. Then from the back, old Doc Hartley started clapping, slow and steady. A few others joined him. It was not forgiveness, but it was a start. As they were leaving, a crying Agnes Holbrook approached them. "I am so sorry, Eliza. I was your friend, and I left you all alone." Eliza looked at the woman who had turned her back when things got hard. "Yes," she said softly. "You should have stood by me." Agnes choked back a sob, knowing she would have to live with her choice forever. "Some things cannot be fixed, Agnes," Eliza told her gently. "Choices have consequences." As Agnes walked away, Eliza felt a heavy weight lift from her shoulders. In the weeks that followed, the town was quiet. Some people apologized, others stayed bitter, but most just left Eliza in peace, which was all she wanted. The trial in Helena was over before it really started. Danny Warren testified against Marble for a lighter sentence of 5 years. The jury was out for less than 3 hours. Guilty. Marble Kane was sentenced to 20 years in the territorial prison. She was 43 years old. At the sentencing, Marble stared at Eliza with pure, unblinking hatred. Eliza just looked right back, holding her ground finally and truly free. Marble was the first to look away. The ride back to the ranch was quiet until Silas finally broke the silence. He asked Eliza how she felt now that everything was finally over. She confessed that after fighting for so long, she felt empty and unsure of who she was supposed to be now. Silas listened for a long while. He then told her exactly who she was. She was Eliza Crow, his wife, a woman who had survived hell and stood tall, a woman who made medicine, grew impossible gardens, and ran into fires to save animals. He told her that was more than enough. A warmth spread through her chest as she realized his opinion had come to matter a great deal. 2 weeks later, the money arrived. With interest, it came to nearly $2,300, more than she had ever seen. She stared at the bank draft, hardly believing it was real. Mrs. Chen, who had become a trusted friend, told her to make a new future. That evening, Eliza told Silas her plan. She wanted to open a clinic in one of the nearby towns, using her knowledge of herbs to help people who could not afford a doctor. She would use Thomas's money to build something good from their shared past. Silas considered it carefully. He knew it would be a hard road with some folks still whispering rumors, but Eliza was determined to prove them wrong, one patient at a time. Silas saw the fire in her eyes, and slowly a smile spread across his face. He told her he thought it was a fine idea. He said they could do it together. He would help with finding a place and making sure she was safe. He offered to be her partner. They shook on it right there at the dinner table. The next 2 months were a blur of activity. They found an old store in Three Forks, and with help from Mrs. Chen and the ranch hands, they turned it into a proper clinic. On a crisp October morning, Eliza opened the doors. The sign read, "More Clinic, Herbal Medicine and Care." She kept Thomas's last name for it, a quiet honor for the man whose sacrifice made this new beginning possible. Before the first hour was up, her very first patient walked through the door. Word about Eliza's clinic spread like wildfire. In just 1 month, folks were traveling for days to see the widow whose medicines actually worked. She treated everyone with kindness, whether they could pay or not. One afternoon, Silas stopped by and found her glowing with purpose. He watched her for a moment before saying, "Thomas would be so proud of you." Eliza's heart ached a little, but she knew it was true. This was the future he had wanted for her, just in a way neither of them expected. Silas then gently tucked a stray piece of hair behind her ear. "And Eliza," he said softly, "so am I." In that quiet moment, something shifted between them. Just as the air thickened with unspoken words, the clinic door swung open, and another patient walked in. "I will see you at home for dinner," Silas said with a small smile. The word home echoed in Eliza's mind. The Crow Ranch had become just that. Winter arrived early that year, blanketing the land in snow. The clinic was busier than ever, so she hired Catherine, another young widow who needed a purpose. Then one blustery afternoon, old Doc Hartley himself came stomping in, announcing he was there to check out the competition. Doc Hartley inspected her shelves with a critical eye. But when Eliza showed him her detailed record books, his expression changed. He saw notes on every plant, every remedy, and every single patient. The old doctor grunted with approval. "This is damn good work, Mrs. Crow, better than half the physicians I know." He then stunned her with a suggestion. "Have you ever thought about getting formal training? There are real medical schools that would take a woman with your practical skill." He told her that medicine needed people with natural talent, people who thought differently. He left her with a stack of medical journals, opening a door to a future she had never imagined. That evening, she showed the journals to Silas. "Doc Hartley thinks I should pursue formal medical training," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I am 32 years old, Silas. The idea is terrifying." He moved to sit beside her, taking her hand in his. "When I married you," he began, "I promised you protection. What I should have said is that I also promised you freedom. The freedom to become whoever you want to be." His grip was warm and sure. "If you want to study medicine, then you will study medicine. I will support you, no matter how much it changes things. Nothing worth doing is ever convenient, Eliza. You taught me that. Eliza felt tears welling up. When did you get to be such a romantic? I am not romantic. I am practical. His smile, though, took the edge right off his words. Practically speaking, a wife who knows medicine saves a man a fortune and doctor's bills. Eliza let out a real surprised laugh, and Silas's grin grew wider. There she is, he said, his voice low. I was starting to wonder if the woman who knew how to laugh was gone for good. She was lost for a bit, Eliza admitted. But I reckon she is finding her way home. They just sat there, holding hands, while the snow fell soft outside the window. Silas, she said, breaking the quiet. When we married, you said it was not a love match. You said it was practical. Is that still true for you? The silence stretched out. His thumb drew little circles on her skin. No, he said at last. That stopped being true somewhere between you running into a burning barn and you standing up in that church telling the whole town what for. I cannot pinpoint the moment, Eliza, but somewhere along the line, practical started to feel mighty personal. What kind of personal, she whispered. The kind where I cannot stop thinking about you, he said. The kind where the thought of you leaving just plain terrifies me. Not because it is a bother, but because I have gotten used to you being here, being mine. He raised her hand and kissed it gently. I love you, Eliza Crow, and I am tired of pretending this is just some arrangement. His words hung in the air, honest and raw. She thought of Thomas, and the familiar ache was there. But something else was there, too. Permission to move on. I loved Thomas, she said softly, holding his hand tighter when he started to pull away. A part of me always will. But the woman he married, she is gone. The woman I am now, the one you helped me find. She loves you too, Silas Crow. Maybe a person gets more than one great love in a lifetime, if they are just brave enough to reach for it. You mean that? He asked, his voice thick. I mean it, she said, and the truth of it filled her whole heart. I love your strength. I love how you gave me room to heal. I love that you believed in me. I love that you see me. Her voice was barely a whisper. Not as a project or some poor widow, but as a partner. Silas stepped closer, his big hand gently cupping her face. Then may I kiss you as your husband, as the man who truly loves you? Yes, Eliza breathed. This kiss was nothing like the first one at their wedding. It was slow and deep, full of unspoken trust and the fragile hope that happiness was finally within their reach. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. So what comes next? He asked. Eliza pulled back, a new strength in her eyes. I'm going to enroll in my courses. I will keep running the clinic and become the best healer this valley has ever seen. And you, she said, will stop sleeping in that chair. You belong in our bed with me. We are truly married now, Silas, and it is time we started acting like it. A slow, warm smile spread across his face. Yes, ma'am. That winter flew by. Books arrived by mail, and Eliza studied late into the night while Silas worked on the ranch accounts beside her. They were building a life, and it was the best kind of tired. The clinic was busier than ever, and Catherine was a natural at helping. Together, they even started holding private sessions, creating a safe place for women to ask questions about their health. Red Hollow was still a shadow in her life. Some townsfolk, swallowing their pride, started showing up at the clinic for help. Eliza treated them all with the same steady hands. She never forgot who stood by and did nothing, but she did her duty. Agnes Holbrook even brought her son in for his cough. The visit was tense but polite. Sarah Pritchard, however, tried to spread rumors that the clinic was dangerous, but her lies fell on deaf ears. Too many people had been healed there and knew the truth. 1 year after Thomas's death, Eliza rode to Red Hollow alone. She walked right through the market square where they had nearly killed her. People stared, but no one said a word. She went to the cemetery and found Thomas's simple granite headstone. Kneeling down, she traced the letters of his name. "I am sorry it took me so long to come back," she said softly. "I just was not ready." The wind rustled through the pines. "I am happy now, Thomas. I never thought I would be again. The work is good, and Silas," she smiled through a few tears, "he is a good man. Different from you, but good. I reckon you two would have gotten along." She talked for a while, saying all the things left unsaid. When she finally left, a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The grief was still there, but it no longer owned her. She carried the past, but it no longer owned her. As she left the cemetery, she found Doc Hartley waiting. He knew she would be there. He told her he was glad she had survived what the town tried to do to her. He was proud she had not let it make her bitter. Eliza admitted she was still bitter some days, but she was determined to be more than that. Doc Hartley called that wisdom and encouraged her to pursue medical school in Philadelphia. The clinic was thriving, and her work was getting noticed. Silas took her to a conference in Denver, a trip that felt like the honeymoon they never had. On their last night there, Silas asked about expanding the ranch. He wanted to build a safe place for women who needed a second chance, just like she had. He wanted to offer them real work and a new start. Eliza's heart swelled. It was an enormous idea, but they had the means and the experience. She agreed without a moment's hesitation. They planned the entire train ride home, and Mrs. Chen began organizing as soon as they arrived. Construction started within a month. Not everyone was pleased. Other ranchers worried about bringing that kind of woman into the valley. Silas confronted them all at a cattlemen's meeting. He told them his wife was once that kind of woman, innocent but accused. He said she survived because one person gave her a chance. He made it clear that if anyone had a problem with their plan, they were no longer welcome on his land. No one argued. The first widow, Margaret, arrived in August with her 3 children. She was a godsend in the kitchen. Soon, more women came, their stories so much like Eliza's. By the fall, the ranch was transformed into a bustling community of 6 families. The sound of children playing now filled the evenings. It was a network of safety, a place for second chances. Eliza realized this was their true legacy. In October, a letter arrived. She had been accepted to the medical school in Philadelphia. The letter sat on the table for 3 days before she could talk to Silas. She told him how far away it was, how long she would be gone. Silas simply told her she had to go. He said he did not marry her to make her smaller, but to help her become everything she was meant to be. He promised he would be there waiting when she came home. They would figure it out, just like they always did. The winter was spent preparing for her departure. Eliza trained Catherine to handle more at the clinic and cherished her long evenings with Silas. Then, in April, just 1 month before she was to leave, Eliza discovered she was pregnant. The news was a shock. A baby, their baby, would change everything. She wanted this child with all her heart, but she also wanted her dream of becoming a doctor. She felt torn in two. That night she told Silas, and they talked until the sun came up. By dawn they had a new plan. Eliza would put off school for 1 year. She would have the baby, and then, when the time was right, she would go. It would be harder, but it was not impossible. After all, women did impossible things every single day. Life on the ranch settled into a happy rhythm. The women there became her family, sharing advice and preparing her for motherhood. Then, during a snowstorm that lasted 3 days, Eliza gave birth to a daughter. With Mrs. Chen and Catherine by her side, she brought a perfect baby girl into the world. She had Silas's eyes and Eliza's own dark hair. "What will we name her?" Silas asked, his voice thick with emotion as he held his daughter. Eliza thought about her long journey, about the women who found a second chance on this ranch, and about the new life she held. "Hope," she said. "Let's call her Hope." The years that followed were full and busy. When Hope was 15 months old, Eliza finally went to medical school in Philadelphia. A young woman named Julia, who had escaped a bad marriage, went with her to help care for Hope. School was harder than she ever imagined, but more rewarding, too. She was older than the other students and a mother, but she had practical skills they could not match. She combined her knowledge of herbs with modern medicine. She and Silas wrote letters constantly, keeping their family close across the miles. During her third year, Eliza treated a young woman at the charity hospital who had been badly beaten by her husband. As Eliza cleaned the woman's wounds, she felt a familiar sorrow. She knew this story all too well. "You do not have to go back to him," Eliza said gently. "There are places that can help you." The woman looked up with bruised eyes. "Where?" "I have no money, no family." Eliza wrote down the address of the Crow Ranch. "Go here," she said. "Tell them I sent you. They will give you a place to stay and good work. You will be safe there, I promise." In that moment, Eliza finally understood. This was why she had survived everything. It was so she could stand before another broken woman and say with certainty, "You can survive this. You are not alone." Eliza graduated in the spring of 1879, one of only 12 women in her class. Silas brought 3-year-old Hope to the ceremony, who loudly declared that her mama was the smartest person in the world. They returned to Montana as a family, and Eliza did something that shocked everyone. She opened a second clinic right in the heart of Red Hollow. Red Hollow had nearly destroyed her, but she was not returning as a victim. She was coming back as a doctor, ready to heal the very town that had tried to break her. The clinic opened on a warm morning in June. Dr. Eliza Crow stood in the doorway, her name stitched right on her new white coat, and wondered if anyone would even come. Agnes Holbrook was the first to walk through the door, her young son coughing beside her. "I do not deserve your help," Agnes said, her voice barely a whisper. "But my boy does. Please." Eliza treated the child with a steady hand. As Agnes was leaving, Eliza said, "If you truly want to make amends, then speak up the next time you see someone being wronged. Do not let your silence be a weapon ever again." Tears streamed down Agnes's face as she nodded. Others came all day. Some were folks who had taken part in her ruin. Some had just stood by and watched. She treated them all with the same firm compassion. By the end of the week, even Sarah Pritchard had shown up. She could not bring herself to apologize, but her granddaughter had a fever, and Eliza gave her the medicine she needed, because that is what doctors do. They help people. The Red Hollow Clinic thrived. Before long, she and Catherine had one going in Three Forks, too. Eliza even hired a new young doctor named James to help, building a place of healing right in the town that had once tried to break her. A town tried to break Eliza Moore, treating her worse than dirt after her husband died, but they made a big mistake. They didn't count on the richest man in the territory, Silas Crow, seeing the fire she still had inside her. This story shows how the best revenge is not about getting even. It is about building a life so good that it proves all your enemies wrong. Their ranch turned into a safe haven. By 1882, 23 families called it home. They built a school for all the children, and a co-op where the women sold their crafts. Eliza and Silas had 2 more children, a boy named Thomas and a girl named Catherine. Their home was loud, messy, and full of joy. 9 years into their marriage, Silas asked her if she ever regretted it. Eliza looked at the community they had built and remembered the broken woman she once was. She told him, "Never. Hard times are what shape a person. You gave me the freedom to choose my own path, and I chose this." "I chose you," she said, "and I would choose this life with you every single time." Silas held her close and told her he loved every stubborn, brilliant part of her. Now, most folks thought they understood why a man like Silas married the town outcast. They called it charity, a project, but they were all wrong. Silas Crow did not marry Eliza to rescue her. He married her because he saw her true strength, even when she had forgotten it herself. He did not offer her safety. He offered her a partnership. He gave her the freedom to fight her own battles and win. And with that single chance, Eliza built a legacy of healing and hope. She proved that the best answer to cruelty is simply living well. Eliza had survived the worst people could throw at her and made something beautiful. She changed the meaning of the Crow name from wealth to welcome. When people asked her later in life if she had any regrets, her answer was always the same. She regretted the cruelty she had to endure, but she never regretted where she ended up. Because the power to choose your own life is the only freedom that really matters. Her story became a legend, not a fairy tale about a woman being saved, but a real story about resilience. It was about choosing yourself when no one else will. And up in the cemetery, wildflowers always bloomed on her first husband's grave. No one knew who planted them. It was just a quiet reminder that his love had helped build the foundation for all the good that came later. The clinic doors stayed open. The ranch always had room for one more person who needed a hand. The Crow family grew strong, proving to the whole territory that sometimes the roughest start leads to the most remarkable ending. And in the long run, that was more than enough. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.